We have more NHL news to discuss regarding coaches not returning to their teams, including news out of Washington, Anaheim, and St. Louis. Plus, we know the NHL regular season has finally come to a close this evening. We know and confirm all 8 NHL playoff matchups. So we'll go through what to expect there and talk about the coaching changes coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, it's been another busy day of NHL news. I personally have had a busy day as well, so I know some of those news is coming a little bit later. Of course, there's a video up on the channel where we discussed the big news out of Pittsburgh earlier. But some of these other changes we haven't had a chance to get caught up on here as of yet. So in case you missed it or you've been waiting for any analysis on me, here's what's going on. We had more coaching changes announced. We have at least 2 more teams that are going to be looking here for a head coach. Of course, we already know the Penguins are looking for basically a whole new management team outside of a couple of assistants that remain in place to kind of run things there. It sounds like Fenway Sports Group is really not in a huge hurry as well to get everything underway. They want to make sure they find the right people. So it'll be interesting to see how the Penguins navigate the early part of the offseason. But the first part of the news came early today when the Anaheim Ducks announced that they will not be re-signing coach Dallas Eakins. So the Anaheim Ducks will have a new head coach starting next season. Eakins has been with the Ducks organization for parts of 8 seasons. Obviously spent half of that or a little better in the American Hockey League, coaching the San Diego Gulls team. A lot of these players that are with the Anaheim Ducks, if they've been with the team long enough, they may have been coached by Eakins on multiple levels here. So after leaving his post in Edmonton, he's been with the Ducks organization for a long time. He did put out a message thanking the Samueli family who owns the Ducks, as well as a couple of GMs like Pat Verbeek and Bob Murray, who he's worked with in Anaheim. So he was on an expiring contract. We know the Ducks have had some tough seasons and been out of the playoffs for a while. We know that they're rebuilding. We know they are dead last in the NHL this year, 32nd. They have the best odds landing the first overall pick in the 2023 draft and having the potential to get a generational player, Connor Bedard. But they're also going to have a new head coach. So Pat Verbeek said, with careful deliberation and factoring everything in, that they've decided to go to a new direction. This isn't a huge shocker. For one, the team hasn't had a lot of success. But at the same time, is that really on Eakins? I mean, obviously this team's been rebuilding and hasn't had a great roster, which is not his fault in the least. But at the same time, we also have a new GM and Pat Verbeek, who's only been there for, I think a year or there or less. So, clearly he's going to want to have, his own people in place. It's not unusual to see when you see a change in management, again, a change behind the bench as well. So we'll see who he decides to bring in. Obviously, he's been around the league as a long time as a player and an executive in different roles over the years. So we'll see what happens. But, the Anaheim Ducks have not had a ton of success. So in some ways, it's a little surprising because it's not his fault. But at the same time, it's also not surprising given the changes at the management level. So we'll see who they go, for a new potential coach. There's no rumblings that I've seen as of yet on who they might be targeting or who might be possibly in line for that job. We also got news out of Washington tonight that head coach Peter Laviolette and the Washington Capitals are also going to part ways. This is the same sort of scenario. He's not really technically fired. You could say that Eakins and Laviolette are technically fired in a sense, but at the same time, Laviolette, like Eakins, he was on an expiring contract. So they've talked about it and they decided that they're going to mutually part ways, is how that's been announced by the club. So obviously Laviolette is not going to be re-signed. His contract expires here coming up in June, and they're going to go in a new direction. Again, we'd already heard rumblings about the Washington Capitals potentially going down this road. We talked about it here in the channel before, back over the last probably 4 to 6 weeks. There were some rumblings that Laviolette may not return to Washington, that the team might go with a different direction. Certainly, it's first time in a long time they're into the playoffs. Again, I'm not entirely sure that's really on him. He was there for 3 years. For the most part, had a decent amount of regular season success, but the team hasn't had a ton of playoff success since they won the 2018 Stanley Cup. But obviously, that's like I said, that's not really on him per se. But this team is going to be going through a significant amount of changes, I think. We've seen them sell off a lot of players at the deadline. They have some other players, either expiring contracts or whatnot. I think we're going to see some more changes in the offseason. I don't expect them, though, to go into complete sell-off, tear down, or rebuild mode. Obviously, as long as they have Ovechkin, there's no way they're going to do that. They're going to try to retool on the fly here, see if they can get back to being a contending team. But it's going to be tough. A lot of the top players are older and have been through a lot. TJ Oshie, for example, Nick Backstrom, like their bodies have been through a lot. They've been really dealing with a ton of injuries. Then you get Ovi, of course, who's still playing at a high level himself. John Carlson had a significant injury this year, but he's typically, playing at a pretty high level too still. But interesting to see what direction they go down here. I mean, Laviolette came in 3 years ago. They went in a little different direction with a veteran coach, somebody who could obviously, try and take this team to another level, and they couldn't get it done. Again, I think he did pretty well with what he had to work with. Not really entirely sure it's on him, but at the end of the day, Capitals are going in a new direction. Curious to see what else they do. Laviolette had a record of 115, 78, and 27 during his time there in the 3 years with the Washington Capitals. Now, we also seen some changes in St. Louis today. Head coach Craig Berube will be back next season, at least as far as we know right now. Not expecting that to change, but Doug Armstrong did announce today that 2 of the assistant coaches have been let go, and that includes Craig McTavish, longtime veteran NHL former player, longtime, I guess you can call him an executive/coach because he's had a variety of roles over the years with different teams, with the Oilers and Rangers and whatnot. He's only been there for 1 season as an assistant coach, but he won't be back next year. And assistant coach Mike Van Ryn, also, he's been there for 5 years with the Blues, and he's also been let go. They did retain assistant coach Steve Ott. He's going to stay with the organization, and they're also keeping their goalie coach. But those 2 assistant coaches will be replaced. So to me, this is kind of a situation. Usually when you see this, that means the head coach is, you could say, on thin ice or on, hot seat watch, so to speak. I think next year, going into the beginning of the year, if Craig Berube and the Blues have a bad start to the season, I think it's possible you could see a head coaching change somewhere in the first half of the year if things are not going well. If things are going well, or at least to the point that the team or management's happy, then maybe he stays on. But usually when you see changes to the assistants, it's like, okay, we're gonna do this first. If this doesn't get the job done, along with what other roster moves they make, then he'll be the next to go. But I'd suspect Doug Armstrong is going to be busy. He did a lot of moves at the deadline. They were able to pick up some extra draft currency, including some first-round picks and the deals that they traded guys like Tarasenko and O'Reilly. So they definitely have lots of extra currency there in their asset book here to kind of do some things with. I don't expect them to use all these picks of the draft personally, and I think we're going to see Doug Armstrong try to pull off 1 or 2 trades at the draft, using those picks for players that are younger and more skilled, and types of players who can come in and help right away and have a positive impact. So I think we're going to see, maybe nothing too drastic in St. Louis, because obviously he gets some work done at the deadline. They can make a couple more trades at the draft with some of these first-round picks that they picked up. Then I think we're going to see the St. Louis Blues again trying to do some retooling, maybe see a hockey trade or 2. I can see them coming back next year, maybe, with the anniversary of the 3 or 4 different, changes, along with some of the different coaching staff to be built in, and see if they can get back to getting to be a playoff team. But the problem is when you look at some of these teams trying to get back into the playoffs after missing this year, when you look at the teams in front of you where they're sitting, you have to ask yourself, for us to get in, somebody has to come out. Who's going to come out? Is it likely? What are we going to do? It's no easy task. It's really tough in the NHL. So we'll have to see how quickly these teams can bounce back and what kind of things we can expect from them. So as of right now, we have a Penguins team who's looking for a new management group, including a GM, possibly a president again. We have the St. Louis Blues looking for some new assistant coaches. Then we've been to Washington Capitals and the Anaheim Ducks looking for new head coaches. Now, there could be other teams that decide to make the news here that they're going to be replacing coaches or executives in their organizations as well. I would, generally speaking, though, you do get announcements within the first week after the season. It's only fair if you're going to make a change, typically, that you give the people that you're letting go as much ample opportunity as possible to find new work. And at the same time, you want to make your decisions quick enough so that you have, as an organization, ample time to talk to a lot of the good candidates that might now be available. If you take too long to make your decisions, a lot of the candidates that are available that you might be interested in are going to find other work and be off the market. So you typically see a lot within the first week of the end of the regular season. So we could have more in the next few days. Stay tuned. Now, after tonight's regular season matchups, we had 2 games on the schedule today and are finished now. Since it's later into the evening, we now have a completed 22-23 regular season. All games have been played. We have the final standings, which means we now know the full playoff picture moving forward. So I will be doing playoff preview videos to kind of go through each series and give you my thoughts and breakdown and a prediction on what I think is going to happen. So stay tuned for that. And of course, playoffs are going to be getting underway early next week. So we still have about 3 days that we're going to have to wait for games to start. I took 3 days here. I've been looking through the full schedule here as of yet, but it looks like everything's getting started in the early week. So for right now in the Western Conference, we had the Avalanche win their last game against the Predators. So they won the Central. So they will be a division winner. The Vegas Golden Knights win the Pacific Division, which means that Vegas finishes tops in the West. They did have more points than Colorado, which means they will play wildcard number 2. So the Vegas Golden Knights will be doing battle with the Winnipeg Jets. The Colorado Avalanche will be the second division winner in the Central with the second most points. So they will play wildcard number 1, which is the Seattle Kraken. So the Avs will battle the Kraken. The Vegas Golden Knights do the battle with the Winnipeg Jets, which means that the 2-3 spots in each division has the Edmonton Oilers doing battle with the Los Angeles Kings for the second year in a row. And in the Central Division, we have an interesting matchup, the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild. Of course, the Dallas Stars were the first incarnation of a Minnesota hockey team. The Minnesota North Stars became the Dallas Stars, and of course the Minnesota Wild as an expansion team came later. So there is an interesting twist in that sense. I know that the teams now have been so long that there's no players connected to that, but just kind of interesting. As long as they've been both in the NHL, I don't believe, at least not I can think of off the top of my head, that they've run into each other in a playoff series. In the Eastern Conference, we knew some of the matchups for a while, including the Toronto Maple Leafs battling the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's been set for some time. We now know that the Boston Bruins as well will do battle with the Florida Panthers. The Bruins, of course, are the top teams in the league. They're the President's Trophy winners. Florida will be wild card number 2. So the Panthers will battle Boston. And then the other side of the divisions here in the Eastern Conference, we've got the New York Islanders being wild card 1. We'll face the division winners from the Metro, the Carolina Hurricanes. And, of course, that leaves us with the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers having a renewed playoff series. We haven't seen that in quite some time. It's been a long time. I don't believe they've had a series that has not involved Marty Brodeur. It's been that long since they've been doing battle in the playoffs. So it should be a renewed rivalry that we could see continue on for some time, considering where both teams are pretty good right now. They're both at a point where we should expect them to be top contenders in the Eastern Conference for the next number of years, while they still have a lot of young talent on their roster. So we'll see. So those are your full playoff matchups. Those are your coaching changes. Like I said, over the weekend, the next couple of days, stay tuned. There will be playoff preview videos for all the series coming up, some predictions, lots more news to get caught up on here as well. And we'll get back here. There'll be lots of content over the next couple of days while we get ready for the 2023 NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs. So that's all for today. Let me know your thoughts on the coaching changes. Give me some thoughts on the playoff series that are going to be coming up here as well. And like I said, stay tuned for the playoff preview series coming up here shortly. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.